Hey, Instagram. Oh, hey, Periscope. I've got Instagram in my lap right here. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Getting Facebook going and getting Instagram going. There we go. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hey, y'all, hey. Hey, welcome to day 2. Hope you guys are doing well this morning. My eye is bothering me this morning, but it's all right. We're going to get through this. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hey, Shannon. How are you this morning? Good morning. Give people a couple minutes. I normally try to jump on early to give people a chance to get in so we can start right at 9. But I didn't today. So let's just give people a couple of minutes to get on this morning. Good morning, good morning. Oh, we are on day 2. So yesterday we talked about the Amorites. We spent an hour talking about the Amorites. There was a whole lot to cover yesterday. Not as much to cover today. I don't think we'll be on for an hour today. But just as important, come on in. As you come in, share with your friends and your followers. Let them know that we are here and we are live. That we'll be here every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. For now. Y'all know my time changes. I try to warn y'all when the time is changing. But we are here every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. until something else changes and we have to change the time. It's all right. We keep coming back every Monday through Friday, even though the time is different. All right. Well, let's get started with Giant Slayers for today. So yesterday we talked about the Amorite. Hey, Patrice, how are you this morning? Yesterday we talked about the Amorites, we talked about the lover boys, the talkers, we talked about all the different ways that they show up and how we slay those giants, right? So that was really about people that like to start rumors, people that like to put you down, people that like to talk about you. And we talked about how Joshua's example in the Bible talked about how Joshua's example in the Bible show us how to deal with those people. And so now we're going to move on to our second giants, which are actually called by different names, by different people. Hello. I can't even see that. That are actually called by different names by different people. And so the giant we are talking about today are and I'm going to say this all jacked up, it's the Rephaim, Rephiam. So they are mentioned by that name most times in the Bible, but they also are mentioned by other names. So the Moabites called them the Emim, Emims. They called them the Emims. And the Ammonites called them the Zuzumims. So Zuzummims. So they are called different names by different people in the Bible. Their original name, their main name, the Rephaim, it means the faded ones or the remedied. So the faded ones, and in some cultures, if you go and you study them and you look in some cultures, especially when you get into Greek cultures, the faded ones really means the ghost, right? We say the faded ones. If you dig into Greek mythology and Greek history and you see this word, they typically are referring to people that are ghost or dead, or in purgatory, in the parts of that culture that believe in purgatory, or in hell. So the faded ones, or the remedied. So that is what that means. Emims means fear or terror. So the Moabites saw this group as fears and terrors. And then Zuzumims means the tribes that make noise or the dealt with. So when we're talking about this giant, there are a bunch of things wrapped up into one. But really what it comes down to is that they are the group that God dealt with. They were done. They were over. And the land that they were in was promised to God's people. They were dealt with. But in some cases, because they were giants, they were physical giants, in some cases, just their stature caused people to fear. And so we see the faded ones, right? Faded ones, we talked about being deceased, but when we think about it in light of our God and that he promised the land to these people, when we talk about the faded ones, there may be people that are inhabiting the land that God told us to possess, but he's already dealt with those people. And so what we need to take from this is that we need to be able to defeat our fears to possess the things that God has called us to possess. And so if you are on Facebook, you got a bunch of scriptures here. They were too many to type onto Instagram or to Periscope, so I am going to call them out for Periscope and for Instagram. But the first verse that we're going to go to is Genesis 14:5, and I'm actually not going to read it because Genesis 14:5 really just mentions the name of this group, and it mentions that they were defeated. It doesn't tell us how. Yesterday when we talked about the Amorites, we saw that they were defeated by Joshua, and we got his 7-step strategy for defeating the Amorites. Well, everywhere we look about this group, it just says they were defeated. This person defeated them. This person defeated them. There's only one place in Deuteronomy where it gives any glimpse of how they were defeated, and it just simply says that God destroyed them. And so what this really brings us to is that the fears, the faded ones, the remedy, these are things that have already been dealt with. They're done and they're over with, or they don't really exist, but we have some fear over it that we need to conquer. And so I'm going to spend some time at the end talking about one of my favorite authors, Dr. Carolyn Leaf, because Dr. Carolyn Leaf is actually a neuroscientist, and she is a Christian, and she has made it her life's work to help Christians. So go look her up after this. She has made it her life's work to marry science and the Bible and help Christians to really implement the things around renewing our minds, using the principles from the Bible and using the principles from neuroscience to help us do that. And so we're going to talk about how do we defeat this giant using her principles at the end. So Genesis 14:5 says they were defeated. Deuteronomy 2:10 and 11 talks about them living in the land and they were defeated. Deuteronomy 2:20 through 21 talks about God destroyed them so that his people could inhabit that land. So you have to remember, whenever you come up against things that bring fear into your life, or things that you thought were dealt with and they seem like they keep popping up, you have to remember that those things are there trying to keep you from the land that God has for you, but they are already defeated. So let's talk about fear. Let's talk about fear, because that's probably the most tangible thing for us that keeps us from stepping into the promises that God, Rhonda, that keeps us from stepping into, and Dawana, that keeps us from stepping into the promises that God has for us is fear or terror. And so the dictionary definition of fear is an unpleasant emotion. So fear is an emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain, or a threat. So fear is an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain, or a threat. And so I think the Moabites had their name right when they called them fear, when they called them Emims, because they talked about fear, right? They talked about fear. And from this dictionary definition of fear, Fear is something that we believe. It is something that we construct based on our beliefs that something is going to harm us. The other definitions of this giant says they were dealt with and they were remedied. They are faded and they are just making noise. So why would they be a giant other than the belief systems that we've set up in our head that causes us to think that this thing, these people, this obstacle is going to be a threat to us, cause us some type of pain, or cause us some type of danger. And so you have to be able to recognize that fear is a giant, right? They were defeated. So if we go back and we talk about the Amorites, right? Those are people that are actually talking. And sometimes we can actually shut down the people that are talking and saying that we can't do this, or we can't be there, or we think we're all that. And we shut those people down. But then because we've been around those people or those situations for so long, we build up a belief system that even when those people are gone, because the Bible says God destroyed these giants, so they were gone. Even when those things are gone, our belief system causes us to get into our feelings, get into our emotions, and think that we are not going to be able to get to where we need to get to because of some type of danger or some type of pain that we're gonna go through. And so we have to, as Dr. Carolyn Leaf says all the time, we have to constantly renew our mind. So one of my favorite verses listed on Facebook here is 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound mind. Some versions say of self-control. So if you think about sound mind and self-control, if there's something that is promised to us, somewhere that we are trying to get to, somewhere we are trying to go, we destroy fear by getting control of ourselves, by taking control of our minds, right? Breaking down toxic thoughts, breaking down fears, and doing things that we know we're supposed to do to get to where we're supposed to get to, despite the fear. I know you've heard people talk about feel the fear and do it anyway. Emotions are real, but they are not real. Emotions are real, but they are not real. Fears come up to say, hey, look around and assess your situation, right? Look around and assess your situation. Fears were never meant to paralyze us and keep us from going forward and doing the things that we were called to do. Fears were supposed to put us on guard so that we make sure that we are not making missteps, not to keep us paralyzed. So if you think about the times that the people in the Bible came up against giants, there's so many times that it talks about the Israelites coming up against giants and they're defeating them. And then when they got in the Bible, they get to the promised land and they see these giants in particular. They see these giants and they go, oh my God, they're too big. They're way bigger than us. We can't take them. Even though they've done it time after time after time, they've built up a belief system in their heads that said, that's too dangerous. That's too much for us to handle. And so that fear paralyzed them, instead of them seeing the giants and saying, okay, they're in the land that God told us that we should take. We've defeated giants before. Let us think about what we've done in the past to defeat the giants, because those battles were preparing us for this time. Let me think about the things that God has done. Let me think about the lessons that God has taught us, and then use those lessons to conquer this giant. That's what fear was meant to do. It was meant for us to go back and say, okay, what lessons have I learned up until this point that can help me overcome what's standing between me and the promised land? And so it's really a matter of us capturing our thoughts and then moving forward in the direction that we are supposed to move forward in. I want to go to Matthew 21:18, because this really talks about, and you got 21:18. You guys have heard this story before. So this is the story of Jesus and the fig tree. So 18 says, now in the morning, he returned to the city and he hungered. And when he saw a fig tree in the way, he came to it and found nothing thereon, but leaves only, and said unto it, let no fruit grow on thee henceforth forever. And presently the fig tree withered away. And when the disciples saw it, they marveled, saying, how soon is the fig tree withered away? Jesus answered and said unto them, verily I say unto you, if ye have faith, and doubt not, ye shall not only do this which is done to the fig tree, but also if ye say unto this mountain, be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, it shall be done. And all things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive. And so Jesus was saying, so here it's saying, Jesus was hungry, right? So Jesus had a problem. He wanted to eat. He went to this fig tree. The fig tree should have had fruit on it. The fig tree should have had fruit on it, but it didn't. But instead of Jesus whining and complaining and saying, oh, I'm never gonna eat, I'm so hungry, where am I gonna get food from? Jesus looked at the fig tree and said, your job was to bear fruit, and since you can't bear fruit, you need to go away. And the tree went away, which meant it just cleared space for Jesus to find another fig tree that had figs on it. And he was explaining to the disciples that the fig tree was a little thing. But if they had faith and they believed that when they spoke to something, they could move things as big as mountains as long as they believed. And so we go back to fear. Fear is a belief system. So what do you believe? Do you believe that what the Bible says is true? Where it says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, that it says right here, I just read to you, all things, whatever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive it. Do you believe that? Or do you believe what you see with your eyes in the natural realm? What do you believe? If you are believing what you see with your eyes, you will never defeat the giant of fear. You have to be able to see things with your eyes, process them with your mind and your correct belief systems, and then move forward in faith towards the thing that you are trying to get to. And so let's talk about Dr. Carolyn Leaf a little bit. So I told you guys that Dr. Carolyn Leaf, I really highly suggest that you go and you watch some of her videos. Again, she takes neuroscience and the Bible and blends them together and shows you how your brain works, how you build habits, how you tear down toxic and negative beliefs and replace them with the correct beliefs. She does an awesome job. I am just going to overview her because I could never do justice to the work that she has done. So you can YouTube her. You can go find her book. Switch on Your Brain is one of her popular books. She also has a book that talks about feeding your brain. Go look up Dr. Carolyn Leaf. But Dr. Carolyn Leaf says that there are 5 steps that you need to do daily in order to renew your mind, capture any toxic thoughts, and rebuild the correct thoughts in your brain. And so those 5 steps are gather, reflect, journal, revisit, and active reach. So I'm going to tell you what those 5 steps mean. So gather, when she talks about gather, it is kind of like when we do our SAG sessions and I ask you, what's the primary thought in your mind right now? That's what gather is. And so she's asking you to think about, what are the negative thoughts that you have in your mind? What are the thoughts you have that don't line up with the word? What are the fears that you have? And she wants you to bring those things up into your mind. And then the next thing she wants you to do is she wants you to reflect. And when she's talking about reflecting, she is really talking about thinking through those negative thoughts and where they come from, getting down to the root of where those negative things come from, because she is not about, I love affirmations, right? I say affirmations every day, but she is not about, because she's a scientist, she is not about people just talking about and saying affirmations. And I know sometimes in church, they tell us to read the word, right? Read the word out loud, memorize scriptures. But what she tells us is that it is great that you memorize scripture. But if you don't really think about the negative and toxic thoughts that you have and get down to the root of them so that you can dig up the root and replace the root with the right things, that you create cognitive dissonance. And what cognitive dissonance is basically what a lot of us end up with, where we go around and we quote, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But then in our day-to-day life, we're like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Lord, I can't get up early in the morning so that I can go to the gym. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But in action, we're like, no, I couldn't do that job. I don't have the education to do that job. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That's cognitive dissonance, where we are using Bible verses not as principles that we actually should walk out and that we actually do, but we're using them as affirmations, and they don't line up with our behaviors and they don't line up with our life. And so what we get is that on one hand, we're like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But on the other hand, our life does not show that I can do all things through Christ. We're not doing all things. We're not achieving the goals that we need to achieve because we have some roots down there that says, I can't do this. And we haven't actually dug it up and replaced it. And so she says to reflect. And then the third thing she says to do is to journal. And when she says journal, she really wants you to take that thought and she wants you to create like a movie picture of it. So if you are getting ready to interview for a promotion at work and you have fear about the interview, you have fear about whether or not you can actually do your job, what she wants you to do is take that fear and write it completely out. She wants you to play the movie of it completely out. What does that actually look like? Why do you think you can't do that job? What do you think is going to happen in that situation? She wants you to play out your worst case scenario on paper so that you can see it. And then once you have done that, to revisit it and say, does this really line up with the beliefs that I profess? Does this really line up with the life that I want to live? Does this really line up with the things that God has told me that should happen in my life? Revisit it and actually rewrite that story is what she wants you to do. To dig down, figure out the root, write out the complete story, and then revisit it and rewrite out the story in the right mindset. And then after you revisit it and you've rewritten your story, because a lot of us, I don't know about you, but I follow a lot of people that talk about journaling and talk about vision boards and talk about visualization, right? And for me, it was really hard to visualize the good stuff, right? It's easy to visualize the bad stuff because we typically have some form of some point of reference for bad stuff that can happen, right? But the good stuff, when we are forward thinking, forward looking to do something different than we've never done before, we don't have a point of reference. And so we can tend to create stories of fear because we don't have a point of reference for good things happening. And so what Dr. Carolyn Leaf's process teaches us is, okay, so it's easy for you to construct this story of negative thoughts. Now take that negative story and rewrite it the way that you really want the outcome to look, right? And then after you've done that, she says you do an active reach. So you take the fear right? You take the fear, you dig down to the root of it, you journal out what's the worst thing that can happen, you revisit it, and you flip all of the worst things that can happen into the things that you want to see happen. And then you have your vision board, right? You have your vision board, you have your goal statement, you got to it in a different way. It's kind of like our SASH sessions, right? I say, come on, let's talk about the fear, right? Let's talk about the fear you have to overcome so that you can recognize it when you get to it. But she has you to flip that and revisit it and write out the story as you would want it to look. And then once you have that, she says to do an active reach. And the active reach is actually just taking something small that you can do over and over and over again today to get you to your revisited story. So again, if we go back to you applying for this promotion, you don't know if you're going to do well in the interview, you don't know if you can do the job, you wrote that all out and what it looks like, and then you go back and you revisit it and say, here's what I would like the story to look like, right? I'm going to go to the interview. I'm going to wow the interviewers. I'm going to get in the job. I'm going to do an amazing job at it. Here's what that amazing job is going to look like. And now you have what your story is supposed to look like. And then what she says is, okay, now you have your positive story, right? You have what your outcome is supposed to be. Now do something about it, and do something today that matches with that story, even if it's small. So if the next step of that is you have to do the interview, and maybe you were worried about the interview part, well, maybe your active reach is you're going to get online and you're going to research interview skills. You're going to get online and you're going to research the technical parts of that job or the laws that go with that job, and you're just going to repeat them and memorize them. You're going to do something small that is an active reach towards you reaching that goal. And that is how you overcome this giant of fear. You recognize it, you dig down to the root of it, you play out what you think is the worst case scenario, and then you flip it to what you actually want it to be, and then you do something to move towards what you want. And so that is the giant for today. Fears and terrors, the faded one. I really, really encourage you guys to go and Google Dr. Carolyn Leaf. Google Dr. Carolyn Leaf. She does have her own channel on YouTube, so you can go and YouTube her, but go and watch Dr. Carolyn Leaf, because she will really break down to you what happens in your brain when you rehearse fears over and over and over again, and what happens in your brain when you rehearse, which means think and do, when you rehearse the word of God over and over again. So with that, I'm going to let you all go. I will see you all back here 9 a.m. on Instagram, on Periscope, and on Hey Latoria, and on Facebook at 9 a.m. as we cover our next giant. Go look up Dr. Carolyn Leaf, y'all. See you later. Bye.